What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Before I introduce two amazing human beings, Tom Neafcy and Kathy Barnette, let me first tell you a little bit about the podcast, where you can find it. The Two Dates and the Dash podcast is pretty much everywhere there's a podcast. You can go on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever. That's where you can find it. Please hit the subscribe button. It helps me as far as getting my analytics, so I'd appreciate that. There's 85 other episodes that you can peruse and listen to at your leisure. If you want to learn more about me personally, you can go to my website, mattcubbler.com. You can order a copy of my book, A Brother's Love, or find out anything about my career and speaking engagements on that website. You can also find the podcast audio and video there as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce individually first, ladies first, the future Congresswoman from the 4th District, Congressional District of Pennsylvania, Ms. Kathy Barnette. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's my pleasure, and it's an honor, to be honest with you. I've been waiting for this day to meet you. I've actually tried to get to a couple of your events, and it just, with my police schedule, it just never seems to jive. But it's a complete honor to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do for us.
Thank you. And now the other person on the show, the future state legislator from the Pennsylvania 146th District, Tom Neafcy. How are you, buddy?
Good, man. Thank you for having me, Matt. Good talking with you.
So just a little brief history, and this is how, politics works. So I'm not a politician. I did throw my name into the ring for politics in the beginning here as a write-in candidate in the 146th as an opponent of Tom and Joe's. And mostly, and this was more against Joe than it was against Tom, mostly because my business got closed because of COVID and the governor's restrictions. And it sort of put me in this, what can I do to change things?
Right.
Because I felt helpless that my business got shut down and I had no control over that. So I decided to enter as a write-in candidate. That didn't work out. So I've thrown my support behind Tom, and all the people that were supporting me are now supporting Tom. And my goal is to help him across the finish line so that he can do the things that I know that he's capable of doing in the 146. So there is a little, a cool little backstory behind this event happening as we speak. So I asked one question of all my guests. I'm going to start with you, Kathy. And it's a very simple question, but it can be very complex when you think about it. But this question is, who is Kathy Barnette?
Who is Kathy Barnette? Let me think. To some, I am an enigma, mysterious, hard to understand. To others, I represent all that is good about this country. I was a little Black girl who grew up on a pig farm in Southern Alabama. I grew up below the bottom rung of the economic ladder. I grew up in a home with no insulation, no running water, an outhouse in the back, and a well on the side. But because no one told me I was a victim, I became the first in my family to go and finish college. I spent 10 years in the U.S. Army Reserves, where I was accepted into, I know, right? Where I was accepted into officer candidacy school, spent time in the financial industry, corporate America. I was an adjunct professor of corporate finance. I speak to millions, authored my first book, and now I'm running for Congress, from a pig farm to now a candidate for Congress. So to some, I reflect all that is good about this country, no matter who you are or where you are. If you are willing to put in the work, if you're willing to dedicate yourself, to discipline yourself, to follow some rules, you can carve out a life for yourself. So to hopefully many, I inspire. But I recognize that to some, I'm an enigma.
That's a great answer, and it encompasses a lot of information that we're going to dive into in a second. I'm going to ask Tom the same question. Who is Tom Neafcy?
I'm a guy who was born and raised in Trapp, Pennsylvania, one of the oldest of 6 children, with a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked for Philadelphia Electric Company, a public utility. Our third sister is a severely handicapped girl. She's nonverbal. She's 63 years old. She has mental and physical disabilities. She's currently in a private setting over in Newtown Square, and it's a responsibility of my brothers and sisters. Now that my mom and dad have passed, we take care of her. She's our special child, special sister. She was my dad's special little girl, and we carry that on today in his memory. I went to work for Pico. I spent 33 years with them. At age 51, we got early retirement, forced early retirements. It wasn't by our choosing. The company decided to make changes, and they pushed out all the senior, older guys. So at 51, I had to reinvent myself. Went out, started another career in the transportation business. Over this course of time, since I was in my late 30s, I became involved in Limerick Township, first as a volunteer on every committee that there was. And then in 1993, I ran for public office for the first time, and I won the primary by 60 votes. Knocked on every Republican door in Limerick and got the endorsement got the primary election over the endorsed candidate. And from there, it's been history. I've been on my 20th year serving in the board at Limerick. I'm proud of where we've come, where we started and where we're at today. We are one of the few communities in the state of Pennsylvania who has zero debt, which is unheard of in municipal government and government period.
Right.
Municipal government. When I first got involved, Limerick Township didn't have a park. Today we have 5 parks. I'm very proud of Limerick Community Park. I consider that my baby. I was the chairman of the board when we bought the ground with a grant where we bought a $350,000 piece of ground, 55 acres back in the 90s. And the township contribution was $35,000. And in 2001, we took it from a piece of land to shovel in the ground and started building the park. And it's the model for the community right now. You say Limerick Community Park, everybody knows it. From inside the community, plus far outside the community, people come here. So that's one of my proud accomplishments. Being debt free is another one. We just built a brand new administration building, which is debt free. We've spent a fortune, or not a fortune. We've invested heavily in our fire departments to keep them volunteer so they can go out and do their job and recruit versus have to worry about fundraising. So we've given them as much financial support as we can. Both fire companies Limerick Station just built their new firehouse a couple of years ago. And right now we're currently in the process of building Linfield Station's firehouse. That will probably be completed probably early spring of next year. So some of the things we've done, it's a great community, taxes are low, and it's a very safe community. We invested heavily and we support the men and women in blue. I mean, they're the number one cheerleader for the township. They're the face of the township in many respects, and they really represent the community well. So.
Well, I personally appreciate that. As you know, as a Limerick Township resident, and the chief of police happens to be my son's godfather, so I have a little bit of a homeboy attitude when it comes to the police department, obviously, and being a cop in a neighboring jurisdiction. Tom, we're going to ask you to sit tight. I just want you to stay and listen to Kathy because she has a hard stop in about 15 minutes, and then we'll pick up where we left off with you on that question. If you don't mind, Kathy. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You're a black conservative in 2000.
Is that the elephant? Oh,
that's the elephant in the room. You say enigma, I say elephant. I'm just asking you. I hear your story, right? And I grew up in Pottstown, in poverty, lived in all the Section 8 low-income housing projects in Pottstown over the course of my life. So I understand struggle, but I don't know if I understand Southern Alabama black struggle, right?
Southern Alabama black pig farm struggle.
Yes, I forgot the pig farm. So tell me how, because it's amazing to me when I first saw your first ad on Facebook, I thought, how did she get there? How did she get to this person who stands before us representing all the things that I hold dear? The Constitution, America, law and order, home of the free, land of the brave. That is what I believe in to my core. And I served my country for 4 years in the Army on active duty. So who are you? And I want to know how your life got you to where you have these values and this belief system that is currently, I believe, underreported, that there's probably way more Kathy Barnetts out there.
Oh, there is.
But how did you get to this point?
Oh, there is. I have to give it to my grandparents. They helped my mother raise me on both sides of my family, both sets of grandparents. When you grow up on a farm, if we wanted beans or peas, potatoes, we had to go out in our own garden and grow it. There was no giant for us to run over to our Walmart. We had to grow it, right? So you learn some values that with a good seed that is planted and taken care of, you can produce a crop. I think it begins there, of just understanding those kinds of values, that no one is going to hand it to you. You go out and you take it, and you go out and you do what it is that you need to do. But also, giving my life to the Lord at 19 years old was very instrumental in setting me on a new path, on a different path than where my life was perhaps leading initially. So I'm very grateful to the Lord for coming into my life. That was perhaps one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because I don't know, it was a whole mind shift in how I saw myself and what I wanted to do. I went to college after giving my life to the Lord, just started on a completely different path than I was leading initially. But then after that, again, getting an education. Education was key to me getting off that pig farm, of clawing my way out from up under a rock. And that's why it's such a central piece of my platform today. I earnestly believe what Frederick Douglass said so many years ago, that knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. If you want people to have options, and to know that they have options, and to have the ability to do new and interesting things, give them knowledge, whether that's trade school knowledge, whether that's just a really good foundation, or whether it is going to a four-year college and thereon. But nonetheless, giving people that opportunity.
So I didn't go to college. I had an appointment to the Coast Guard Academy, decided to enlist in the Army, piss off my parents. Worked great. And then, here I am 30 years later. Now I'm a cop for 28 years, but I don't have a college degree. I've insisted both my kids, my daughter's graduated from Bloomsburg, and my son's just put in his packet for ROTC. So hopefully he gets his scholarship, and he'll be going hopefully to the University of Maryland. So once you become educated, once you decide, you see that the world can be opened up to you with knowledge, right? And it's not just being pigeonholed in one direction. It's you seem to be a woman who's very keenly observant. And you probably, when you're in, it's no secret that there's a strong left influence in our college education system. How did you, as a Black female coming up from the South, now into college, formulate the conservative views that you have through that otherwise heavy influence of left-leaning idealism?
Yeah, you know what? I think it, a large part of my personality is just what you picked up on, is me being observant. You probably got that from your policing detective skills, right?
I'm a human behavior and body language expert.
Yes, right. I'm very observant. I pay attention to the world around me. And I remember being a junior in college and decided that I wanted to get involved in politics. And I went to the first Democrat office I saw, because like most Black people, although I grew up in a very deep South, very conservative principles, I was born into the Democrat Party just like I was born into brown skin. There was no conversation, no discussion, no deliberation. You're Black, you vote Democrat. And although I thought I was being very, intentional in who I was voting for, you really don't understand what kind of subliminal messaging that's going on underneath all of that. And so I'm sitting in the office of this Democrat that I walked in and said, I want to join your campaign. And as he's talking to me for the very first time that I can recall, I had the thought, do you even know what he believes? Do you even know if what he believes is what you believe? And it was such an arresting conversation that took place in my head as he was talking to me that I believe that was the first seed that was planted. I didn't immediately stop voting Democrat, but it was a seed that was planted that started me really asking the harder questions. Who are these people we're voting for? What do I believe as an individual? It caused me to prioritize my own life and to enunciate very clearly, who am I? What do I believe? What's important to me? And then use that as a rubrics as I go out and look at these various candidates and see who more closely than not align with that. And as time went on, living life, having different experiences, it became very clear to me that those who lean more to the right in the Republican Party align closer to who I see myself and my country and what I want to aspire to be.
Now, did your time in the military, as you had that first experience going into that Democrat's office and wanting to be a civic type person and offer your help to their campaign, and you said there was those experiences that happened in your life that helped you get a little bit more formulated in your understanding of who you are and the type of things that you believe in and how does that align politically with what party? Did your time in the military help sculpt that?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Probably about 19 years old, my first unit I was assigned to was the CID unit. You would know about that, the Criminal Investigation Detachment. And in that particular unit, it was myself and one other who was not a part of the law enforcement. It was reserved. So in their civilian, everyone, with the exception of two of us, was in the law enforcement industry, whether detectives, police officers, judges, whatever the case may be. Except for myself and one other. I was the youngest by at least 15 years, and I was the only Black person there. And so, and yet when we would travel, these men took such good care of me. We talked, I got to look behind the curtain into their lives. So you hear one narrative coming out of the predominantly Black community about our relationship with police officers. And now I'm eating with these guys, we're all hanging out together and I'm spending so much time with them. And then you begin to see the stresses that are in their lives and what it is that they're thinking when they walk up to a car. They don't know if the person on the other end is going to receive their advice or what is going to be. So again, it just begins to allow you to see things from a different perspective, but also my time in the financial industry, working with two major Wall Street firms and looking at how money flows, and paying attention to how Democrats walk into board meetings that I sat in with plans and strategies and ideas, versus when they go over into the Black community, they're pulling out hot sauce out of their purse, bringing Jay-Z and Beyonce to dance and entertain the Black people. But when they went into these predominantly white boardrooms, they were bringing plans and ideas, strategies, right? And so again, just moving through life, being very observant and paying attention to those things began to inform me as a young person and even still today.
So you touched on a lot of great stuff there. So you're right. When I've been very involved in trying to bring the Black community and the law enforcement together in Pottstown and in my area, and not with a lot of success, sadly. And it's hard. It's hard to have a conversation when that conversation is first of all a very difficult one, and it's not necessarily one that people are willing to negotiate on how do we solve this problem. It's all in on one way or all in on the other way. How do you, in your platform and what you're running on for Congress, how do you communicate effectively with both the white conservative and the black conservative and quite frankly the undecided black voter, who in their heart or in their conscience knows that the lies that they've been fed are not necessarily helping them in any way? How do you get them to unprogram what's been placed into their brain and reinforced for generations potentially? How do you do that? How is that? That's got to be one of the most difficult roles that you're facing running for office.
Yeah, no, it's not difficult for me at all. I just go right in and have the conversation. I mean, it's a very nuanced conversation. I understand, as you just described, unworking the programming. Well, there's a reason for that, right? And there was a point in our history where police officers were used to institute or to what's the word?
Intimidate.
To intimidate or to carry out the law of the land, and specifically in the South, one of the laws of the land was Jim Crow laws, right? And so that is real. We cannot pretend that did not happen, right? So when I go into any circle, I don't go in with rose-colored glasses pretending that our history is not marred by some really ugly and despicable moments. But at the same time, right, pivoting and being able to recognize that our country has done a tremendous amount to right its wrongs. It's not perfect. America is not perfect. Racism exists. There are individuals who hate me solely because of the color of my skin, right? There are individuals who hate me solely because I'm a Republican. There are people who hate me solely because of, maybe I'm not 6 feet tall. Who knows, right? So it's a lot of different things that people can decide that they dislike me about. But when it comes to race, I mean, like, that's a very sensitive topic across I mean, specifically in the Black community, but across spectrums as well. And so it's being able to walk in and to have that nuanced conversation. You will never see me saying racism does not exist. It does. And an individual with a badge can be just as racist as anyone else with a hood on, right? Or a white progressive living in some suburban neighborhood. I mean, hate will take up residence wherever an individual will allow it in. So I have a very nuanced conversation, but then at the same time, I pivot. I love my country. I think this is the greatest country that has ever existed, and I am unapologetic about it. I offer no apologies, not for the history, not for where we find ourselves today. I'm very grateful to be an American. The fact that we're Americans, we're immediately privileged. And again, being in the military, traveling to other countries, as you know, when you travel to these other countries, you don't go into the touristy parts of those nations. You go into the real deal, and you begin to understand immediately why over 1 million people become legalized residents in this nation every single year. It's because we are still a land of hope and opportunity. Now, I think we have an opportunity in this nation. Right now, white progressive liberals have the Black community and everyone else chasing down every whiff of racism, right? And they have told us that our number one issue is police brutality. I do not believe police brutality is the Black community's number one issue. I believe financial inclusion is the second civil rights movement. And so when I go into a variety of communities, specifically the Black community, I'm putting a spotlight on where the focus should be. It is, how do we allow people who are marginalized and underrepresented take part in or have a share in the prosperity of this nation? That's the conversation. But white progressive liberals, some of the most racist people I have perhaps ever met, not that much different from someone wearing a hood in the Deep South, a part of the KKK. They sound very similar, especially when they start talking about their white privileges, how their white skin gives them privileges that my brown skin doesn't. They begin to sound very much alike, white progressive liberals and those that we would associate with KKK. But nonetheless, it is helping people in a variety of communities realize that it is truly white progressive liberals who have come in and told us what our issues are. And that particular issue right now happens to be police brutality. And they have us chasing after every little whiff of racism versus focusing on where the real opportunity is for us.
I couldn't agree more. And I know you're coming up on your hard stop, but I just wanted to first give you one final opportunity in this last minute or two, really share your vision for the 4th Congressional District in Pennsylvania and how you are going to serve every single Pennsylvanian in Washington, so get rid of that miserable, rotten waste of American tax dollars, Madeline Dean.
Okay, you said that, not me.
I said it. I'm 100% standing behind that.
Listen, I love my country and I want to see everyone do well. I don't care of your color, your gender, your background, your journey. I love my nation and I want to see everyone do well. That is the umbrella by which I live, even before I decided to run for Congress. Hence the reason why I can go into any circle and feel very comfortable and have a conversation, because that is the umbrella under which I live my life. I love my country. I want to see everyone do well. To the 4th Congressional District, I am your best chance at ever having anyone in office who will actually listen to you, who will work for you, who will fight for you. I am a fighter. You don't get from a pig farm to now being a candidate for Congress, as the first Black person to ever run for Congress in Montgomery County, and not know how to fight fairly, but to fight nonetheless. And that is what I'm offering you. I'm offering you your best chance. This is it. Please vote for me on November 3rd.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better. I am so honored that you decided to give me some time today and to come on the show.
Thank you.
I'm 100% confident in the fact that on your own merit, you deserve to be elected. I believe that you're going to ride a red wave that is coming. It's coming hard.
I feel it in my bones, man. I feel it in my bones.
I have a theory, and I'll leave you with this. And like I said, I'm a human behavior and body language expert. That's my wheelhouse. But I also am a trained observer. Been doing this for 32 years between the military and as a cop. And I believe that every Democrat will put a sign in their yard. I believe that 15% of conservatives will put a sign in their yard. So that means there's 85% of the conservatives that aren't putting a sign in their yard. That I would say that 100% of all yards with no signs are voting red. And there's way more empty yards than there are Biden signs that I can see.
I agree. I just drove from one end of our state in the southern portion of our district in the southern portion all the way up to Pottstown, and I took the streets instead of taking the highway, because I wanted to see just that. I wanted to see what are people doing in their yards, what's going on, and I am very encouraged. Very encouraged. So I'm so humbled. I'm sorry.
A lack of signs means votes, because people are afraid to have them be targeted.
Yeah. You know what? And the fear is real. It's not fear mongering. The fear is real. We have seen what the mob will do. The mob is laying low right now. Someone must have told them to keep it kind of quiet until November 3rd. But the mob will resurrect itself real soon. So do not forget what we've had to endure these past several months.
Well, thank you, Kathy. God bless.
Thank you, guys.
Is rooting for you, and I will be filling in the circle like we're in 1975 again, filling in the circle for Kathy Barnette.
Thank you so much, Matt. Tom, take care. Blessings.
See you tomorrow night, Cotillas.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Kathy Barnette tomorrow night at 5 p.m.
Oh yeah, you will probably know my schedule more than me.
I'm gonna say
tomorrow. But you know what? They can go to my website at kathybarnetteforcongress.com and you can see all of the events. We have a ton of events scheduled. Yes, I believe it is tomorrow, Wednesday, October 28th at 6 p.m. at Cotillas.
All right, very good. God bless you.
Blessings. Bye.
Take care. Tom, my man.
Okay.
How are you, man?
Good.
I'm excited that we got to, first of all, hear such an amazing woman share her story.
She's a dynamo.
And she's an all-star. She's a rock star. She's got it, whatever it is, and it's real. It's not fabricated. And you can always tell when there's that, we talked about it earlier, the used car salesman pitch. She's not pitching anything.
No,
She legitimately believes everything that she's saying.
she's the real deal.
All right, Tom, time to deep dive. First of all, thank you for making the time today. I know you got a lot going on in your personal life with the candidacy and taking care of your sister and work and everything else. You're not some guy who's just sitting around trying to get elected, hoping that time passes by quickly here to November 3rd. So thank you. All right. So you're from the area. That's one thing I think people don't know for certain is that you grew up and never left the 146th.
I never left. I grew up in Trapp, graduated from Perkins Valley High School, went to work for Pico Energy right out of high school, and then went to night school at Montco, and then classes at Ursinus. Like I said, I moved to Limerick. My father grew up in Limerick. My grandfather's farm was on Graterford Road. And then I moved here in 1984. 1985, a guy who was running for supervisor at the time. Didn't know him. His name was Joe Petrowski, who became one of my dearest friends until he passed away. He came knocking on the door and was selling himself for, to be a supervisor. I liked what he had to say. I voted for him. I questioned him on some stuff. 6 months later, he comes back knocking on my door. He said, I need your help. I said, okay, what do you want? He said, I need somebody to go on our park and rec board. We need to shake it up and bring in some fresh ideas. He said, would you do that for me? I said, sure. So I did. That was the beginning. 1985, and here we are today.
We're talking, 35 years.
35 years. I was, like I said, I served on every committee, commission, volunteered for in the community. Then in 93, I ran for office, lost an election in 2001, ran again in 2009, won, and won again 6 years later. But in the meantime, I always wanted to do something at a state level. I remember my dad, when I was a kid growing up, my dad would be sitting around with neighbors and friends, and I was young, probably 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever it was, and listening to them talk politics. My dad had helped in a state committee or a state reps race in Collegeville back then, but the districts were entirely different what they were.
Right.
And back then, by the way, state representatives was a part-time job. Everyone who was a state rep, they had a full-time job, and they only went to Harrisburg when they were needed, and then they came home. There was none of this full-time salary, lifetime benefits. There was none of that. It was just serve part-time, and you came home and served your community. Had your regular job and served your community. So it always caught my interest, and the opportunity arose this year, and I decided that this was going to be it. So I was going to take my shot. There's things in at the state level that I really believe in that should not be happening. I don't believe politicians should be lifetime careers. I don't think you should be getting pensions. I think if you want a pension, it's a 401k pension like you and I have. Most people in the world today, where they have investment in it. Our elected officials should have investment in their own pensions. When they leave office, that 401k should follow them. It should not be a defined pension plan that you and I as a taxpayer pay for the rest of our lives, or for the rest of their lives. And we're funding it for the rest of our lives.
Right.
Same thing with healthcare. You and I have to pay for our healthcare. Politicians in Harrisburg should be paying for their healthcare once they leave office, not us as a taxpayer funding lifetime healthcare. And last but not least is term limits. We've got to get to term limits in the state, in this country. It is destroying the political process. It doesn't open it up to allow fresh ideas, more innovation in government, because these people get in there and they become career politicians. They may all go in with good intentions, but once they start chasing the money, that's the beginning of the end of them really representing us. It's more about them representing themselves so they can get reelected year after year after year after year. And what I would like to do, what I am going to do, not what I like to do, I am only going to serve 6 years if I'm fortunate enough to win this election. I am going to term limit myself. And that way I don't qualify for a pension, I don't qualify for health care. And it gives somebody else an opportunity to go and run for that position.
That's a very bold statement. You know, I personally agree with everything you just said, but I also agree with the stance that if no one's going to, you have to lead by example. If nobody's going to, because you know how politics works, everything's a give and take. You know, put your hand in this person's pocket, this hand in this person's pocket in order to make something happen. I don't know if we have enough high moral character people in government, in our state government, to actually pass term limits. But I like the fact that someone like you is willing to say, you know what, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it to myself. I'm going to prove to the people that voted for me that I'm willing to stand by my convictions on what I was campaigning on and actually do that. I think that I take my hat off to you and I applaud you for that.
We have to start to have this conversation, and it has to be an ongoing conversation, and it has to get louder and louder and louder, because if we don't, we're going to be locked into this forever. And the other part of it is, by me declaring that I will only serve 6 years, I am not obligated to anybody. You know, what happens was you get too much special interest money in politics and government. And when and that's what these guys do, men and women do when they get elected after the first or second term, they're chasing special interest money. That's what's funding them. So they're not representing us, the taxpayer, the residents. They're representing that special interest money, because
Right.
That's what keeps them in office. For me, as saying I'm going to term limit, that frees me up. I'm not obligated to anybody. I'm obligated to the residents and the taxpayers of 146. I'm not interested in special interest people. I'm interested in the everyday average resident.
And I think that comes down to, and I agree with you, and I believe that 100% about you. But I want to know, where did that moral conviction, where did the understanding of who you are and what you want out of life and what you're willing to give or take to get there? Because that's really what it comes down to, whether we're talking about success in business, success as a celebrity or in politics. If you want to reach the ultimate height, whatever that is, you've got to step on a few necks to get there, and you got to sell your soul. There's very few people that actually get to the pinnacle of success without having taken someone down with them. What makes you the person that you are, the humble servant who's willing to volunteer on special boards within Limerick Township? And you know, no offense, running a township isn't an easy thing to do, especially one that's the second largest township in Montgomery County. And having a budget and having a large police department and multiple fire departments and parks and roadways and all that stuff, and you're doing it in a part-time capacity, right? You're managing a gigantic machine as a low-paid volunteer, essentially, in a part-time capacity. What makes you tick? What is it about Tom Neafcy that's different from other people, that people can look at you and go, I believe in somebody like that?
I believe in community service, number one. What really, I think, really molded my life was my special needs sister. What we had to do for her gives you a foundation and gives you a starting point, and it gives you a strong moral compass, and it gives you integrity, compassion, and that's what drove me. And today, that still is what drives me.
And I don't know if people know that. I didn't know that. And, you know, you didn't know about me until we talked earlier today, but I had a brother who passed away when I was 18 years old. He was 21. He was today would be considered autistic, and he had severe stutter and was made fun of and everything. And throughout his entire life, he struggled. And I learned my moral character comes from understanding what true struggle is and understanding the importance of taking care of family and ensuring that my brother didn't suffer, and make sure that if there was somebody that needed to fight somebody that day, it was me and not him.
Mm-hmm.
And having that, I think that's where we're very much similar, is that I understand how hard it is to live in this world when we're me and you. But now I also understand, having had a brother who had special needs, and you having a sister that has special needs, what it's like to live in a world through their eyes, and how beneficial the world is for us, and how much easier it is for us to live, and to live in a way that is righteous and good and tolerant and humble, having seen the world through their eyes.
You're right. I mean, it's a very humbling experience. I mean, I was, when you probably experienced it, kids are cruel, can be very cruel. And growing up, I mean, I had, there were smart aleck comments made about my sister. They cut to the bone. I mean, they cut to your heart. They hurt. You don't forget them. You learn from them. And that gives you the compassion to help other people and respect other people and feel their pain, and feel their suffering. And that's what molded me. And my father was a great influence. So,
and I think in your role as a supervisor, obviously you work for the township residents. They come in every month, and some months are very mundane when you have your monthly meeting, and then some are a little bit more fireworks. But your job is to listen and to understand and to help solve problems. It's just like mine is as a cop, but yours is more of the fundamental living components, and mine is more of my life's a complete crapshoot, and I need you to fix that. But having that ability to listen and understand and can have compassion is something you've been doing for 35 years.
Correct.
It's part of who you are.
Yes. And when we have issues with the township, and I mean, some of them are very big, and they have a major impact. I look at it as, how is it going to affect the whole community, not just the person who's presenting it, or that project or this project. It's how the impact is going to be on everybody. What benefit is it going to be to the whole community? I've never made decisions based on the presenter's point of view. It's always been, my decisions have been made based on community impact, what's best for the community, and going from there. And I've always said, I will tell you the truth. I'm not going to sit there and tell you something that I don't believe in, and I won't lie to you about it. That's the one thing that drives me crazy, is politicians who will tell you whatever you want to hear to make you like them or support them. I won't do that. I will be honest and truthful with you. Sometimes you may not like the message, but the message you can always count on is being truthful. I won't sit there and I just, it drives me crazy when I listen to some of these people just flat out lie, and the hypocrisy of it.
What do you say to because we have the 146 has, lower middle class. They have the poorer parts of the communities of Pottstown and other areas, and especially in Trapp, they have a couple poor areas. How do you spread your message out to everybody from the upper middle class white person voting for you or potentially voting for you to the person who's impoverished and is having trouble making ends meet? And, and also in the education side, how do you speak to every parent who is concerned about their child's education? So how do you spread that? How does Tom Neafcy spread himself in a way that is understandable to both the ones that have issues that are more of the higher level political side stuff versus the basic needs issues that many people in our district have?
I'll give you an example we had in Limerick probably just about a year ago. We have a trailer park in Limerick, and the owners of the trailer park were not taking care of the maintenance in that trailer park. And we started to get residents complaints about it. So we contacted the trailer park, or the owners of the park, and we had them come in and explain themselves. And let me tell you, the person who was the hardest on the owners of the trailer park was me. I was like relentless on them. There was electric lines that were hanging low, trees that were falling over on the trailers. Just maintenance was atrocious. And I just questioned them. I hammered them. In fact, our attorney told me I had to lighten up. I was hitting them too hard. They said, you're badgering the witness. I said, well, the witness isn't doing his job. He's putting people's lives in jeopardy. So there's people at the lower end of the economic spectrum that I treat them the same as I treat somebody has $1 million property. Everybody's equal to me.
What is it about you that is going to create excitement in people that aren't necessarily overly involved in politics, but they know that their local officials, whether it's the borough of Pottstown or Lower Pottsgrove or Limerick or Royersford or Trapp or Perkiomen, that they are going to be interacting with the state level representative? How do you sell yourself to not only those municipalities, but also the people that they are sworn to represent? How do you become the person that they go, that's the guy I want leading for the next 2 years?
I come at it with a passion. I have that fire in my belly, that passion. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be pushing hard. I'm going to probably get some pushback too from Harrisburg. I'm fully aware of it and I'm fully expecting it. But like I said, I'm committed to everyone in 146. I'm not committed to special interest. Take special interest money. I'm not going to be influenced by it. And like I said, being a person who's going to term limit themselves, that gives me a lot more freedom to do what I need to do for the residents of the 146, because they're the only people I'm obligated to. I'm not obligated to anybody else.
I think what I see the most out of you, Tom, and this is coming from a guy that was actually an opponent of yours for a short period of time. And we had we didn't know each other. Let's just be honest. We'd met each other maybe once or twice in passing, but we had never really had any interactions. So your opinions of me and my opinions of you were based solely on misinterpretations. We'll put it that way. I didn't know at the time that we had so much in common personally and professionally. But what I really do see about you that I like, and I haven't told you this yet, I'm a fighter. I love a good fight. Whether it's intellectual, physical, doesn't matter. I enjoy a good fight. I've been boxing for 35 years. I'm an instructor in Krav Maga. I enjoy a good, deep intellectual debate. But what I appreciate the most about you that you don't see in many politicians you have been quote unquote a politician, albeit in a part-time capacity as a township supervisor. You're not a full-time politician, but you're trying to go into that world. And there's always this little bit about me that I think, oh, is that person going to become that guy that promises the world and doesn't deliver crap? And I think you're such a hard-nosed, passionate fighter that you truly do believe that the ability to make a difference exists within you. And it's not simply how do I get the job and then keep the job? Because ultimately that's what politicians are.
Exactly.
How do I BS you enough to have you elect me? And then how do I stay elected?
Exactly. You got it. You hit it right on the head.
And when you know that you're not going to be there for more than 6 years, you can come out with 6 guns ablazing, baseball bats swinging, bulldozers behind you. And it's not going to matter because you're going out to do as much good as you possibly can in those 6 years.
In that time period. And it gives you a lot of freedom where you wouldn't have it if you knew that you're trying to make a career out of it. So then you have to fall in line with the special interests, the party bosses, the higher ups. I don't have to live that way, and I won't live that way. It's just not me. I'll push back where I think I can push back, and I will push back, and I'll step on some toes. I know that, but I'm there for everybody in the 146th. I'm not there for the party bosses and the special interests, and that's the way I've always fought. That's the way I'll continue to fight, and I'm not changing the way I am today. Because I don't want this for a second career. I just want this to serve and come home. Serve the public and come home. Not stay for the next 20 years.
One final question. What is your message? Because I as you know, I was a small business owner in Limerick Township whose business was shut down permanently due to the coronavirus restrictions placed on small businesses by our governor, and that have continued to flip flop and yo-yo, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's very arbitrary. What is your message to the small business owners in the 146th that will help them understand how hard you're going to fight to help them get their baby back, the thing that they've literally invested everything into in order to see it grow and mature, to only have the legs cut out from underneath it by something they had no control over?
I will push back against this governor every step of the way. Everywhere I can, I'm going to push back. I mean, I'm watching you lost your business, your gym. A survey just came out from the Restaurant Association. They say if things don't turn around in the next 6 months, we may see as much as 63% of the restaurants in the state of Pennsylvania permanently go out of business. Just think about that. If your favorite restaurant you go to on Friday night, 6 months from now may not be there. That's affecting families. I mean, people have their life savings invested in that business. It might be third, fourth generation businesses where the whole family makes a living off of that business, and to have them wiped out, this is unconscionable. I'm going to go in and fight for small business. I'm going to go in and fight for all business. I mean, we've been very successful in bringing business to Limerick. I want to take that same fight to Harrisburg. And we've created jobs in Limerick. I want to see that continue for the whole 146. I want to see jobs in Pottstown and Lower Pottsgrove. I mean, we're starting to see a resurgence in a little bit in Royersford, where the main street's starting to come around a little bit and redevelop. We need to drive that even harder and make that even more successful for the whole 146. I want to see education. I'm a firm believer in school choice and competition in education. I think every child should have the opportunity to get the best education possible. And school choice or competition in education does that. It gives the children more opportunities. It gives the parents more opportunities. We're seeing these kids today, they're starting to suffer with mental health issues. I mean, we were just talking earlier about some young people who just took their own lives because of the COVID lockdown. I want to invest more money in mental health. I'm a strong advocate of mental health. We're not doing anything. I shouldn't say we're not doing anything. We're not doing enough. We need to do more. Invest in mental health. We invest in cancer. We invest in diabetes. We invest in heart disease. But we don't invest in mental health the way we should, because people don't want to talk about it. It's got a stigma. We've got to break that stigma and start talking about it, investing in it, keeping mental health facilities open, not closing them. When you get somebody in the mental health system, a lot of times they end up homeless. Most of the time, or a lot of them end up homeless. Some of them end up in a prison system, which is even worse, where they really don't belong. They belong in mental health. And we spend $45,000 a year on a person to incarcerate them in a prison system. Imagine we could be using that money on somebody in mental health and keeping them out of the prison system. and keep them off the streets from being homeless. You could make them, first of all, you get them healthy. You get them productive, where they can hold a job, take care of their families. They become a taxpayer, not a tax burden. And I'm going to be a strong advocate for that. I mean, we're going to push that. I'll push it. I'll stand on the House floor 24 hours a day talking about it. I have to. We've got to get there. You know, the governor closes mental health facilities. We need to keep them open, especially during this pandemic. So they're the three biggies.
Well, we're certainly in one of the weirdest years in the history of our nation, at least in the last 60 years. And it's, to some people, it's scary. To me, I look at it, every problem is an opportunity to find a solution.
Right.
And 2020 is just a gigantic rolling problem. and you can get overwhelmed, you can get lost in the weeds if you're not paying attention to the finer issues in hand. You can get absorbed up by the totality of 2020. And I think one of the things that this election is going to allow us to do is to get micro again, to start really pinpointing our efforts into specific problems rather than trying to umbrella treat the entire stigma of 2020. And I think somebody like you, Tom, is ready for the job, is capable to do the job, and is the most qualified to do it. And I am proud to give you my support. I will be working the polls for you in Pottstown on election day. And what is your final message before we close out the show? What's your final message to the residents of the 146th?
I will be there for you. I will tell you the truth. I'm not sticking my finger in the air to see which way the political winds blow. You'll get an honest answer from me, and one thing I guarantee you, I will work my butt off for you. I don't care what party you belong to. None of that doesn't matter. What matters is getting results and helping people, and that's what I'm about, and that's where I'm going to be. And hopefully, I can have everybody's support, and we can win this, and we can get this state back on track, get our small businesses back open, get our schools back open, and get kids back in school, and get people healthy again and prosperous again. So, with that.
Well, Tom, I think it's a brilliant opportunity for you. I would highly recommend anybody who's listening to this that lives in the 146 to drive through Limerick Township. See the things that Tom and his 35 years of working tirelessly towards helping Limerick Township, see what that fruit has borne. When you drive by and see the brand new police station and the brand new fire station in Limerick on Ridge Pike, the one being built in Linfield on Linfield Trap Road, how good the roads are in Limerick Township, the amount of business and big business and small business that are in this township. I highly recommend you do that, because that's kind of a blueprint of what Tom's capable of doing for the 146th. So, Tom, thank you very much. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk once we close out the show. Everybody, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Thank you again to my guests today, the amazing future Congresswoman from the 4th Congressional District of Pennsylvania, Kathy Barnette, and Tom Neafcy, the future state representative for the Pennsylvania 146th Legislative District. I am honored to have had you both on the show, and I can't wait to see what happens once the poll booths close on the 3rd at 8 p.m. and see how these votes get tallied out. Thank you, everybody. God bless, and go out and be kind to one another.
Thank you. He's gonna